driven theater company, and it was funded in part by the Texas Commission on the Arts and the Black Seed Grant for Black Theater. So we hope that you enjoy. Well, we know that you'll enjoy. Thank you. This is Fort Travis on Bolivar Peninsula overlooking Galveston. Built using the labor of Army recruits and slaves, it was established by the Republic of Texas to protect this region in 1836. 30 years later, General Granger, with 2,000 Union troops, sailed by Fort Travis, entering the port of Galveston to issue orders of emancipation, ending slavery in Texas, the last Confederate state to end slavery.
General Order Number 3, the United States Army, on this 19th day of June, 1865, Galveston, Texas. The people are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. The freed are advised to remain at their present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts, and that they will not be supported in idleness either there or elsewhere.
It was about 150 years ago when this country finally outlawed slavery. Slaves were treated worse and valued less than farm animals. The institution of slavery was wrong morally, spiritually, and economically.
I wonder how people felt and react when the Emancipation Proclamation freed the enslaved.
Well, you do know that President Lincoln's 1863 proclamation didn't end slavery in Texas. It wasn't until 2.5 years later, when General Order Number 3 were issued, that Texans were finally informed that all slaves are free.
Well,
that's why we celebrate Juneteenth.
Well, I sure bet those folks in Texas rejoiced on their first Juneteenth. This is the day of Jubilee. God's gonna build up Zion's wall. The Lord, he set his people free. God's gonna build up Zion's walls. Great day, the righteous marching. Great day, God's gonna build up Zion's walls.
Susan Ross was 75 when she shared this narrative. She was born in Magnolia Springs, Texas. Questioners who met her in Jasper learned that she still helped her daughters run a small cafe. Her features and skin color suggested to the interviewers that she might have been part Indian.
When my oldest brother heard we were free, he gave a whoop and ran and jumped a high fence and said,
"Goodbye."
Then he hugged me up and kissed me and said,
"Brother is gone. Don't expect you'll see me anymore."
I don't know where he went,
Run, sinner, run.
but I never did see him again.
Run, sinner, run.
Oh, run, sinner, run.
I know the other world is not like this.
Fire in east and fire in the west, bound to burn the wilderness. Jordan River's a river to cross, stretch your rod and come across. Run, sinner, run. Run, sinner, run. Oh, run, sinner, run.
I know the other world is not like this. Tempe Cummings didn't know her age, but she recalled her birthplace was Brooklyn, Texas. Interviewers found her living alone in a weather-beaten shack in the slum section of Jasper.
Mother was working in the house. Oh, and she cooked too. She said that she used to hide in the chimney corners and listen to what the white folks said. When freedom was declared, they wouldn't tell them. But mother, oh, she heard master tell mistress that the slaves were free, but they didn't know it. And he wasn't gonna tell them till he got another crop or two. Oh, but when mama heard that, she slipped out that chimney corner and cracked her heels together 4 times and shouted, "I was free! I was free!" Then she ran to the field against master's will and told all the other slaves, and they quit work. Then she ran away and slid into that ravine and had them bring me to her. Master came out with his gun and shot at mother. But she ran down that ravine and got away with me.
Juba. Juba this and Juba that. Juba skinned the yellow cat. Juba. We grow the corn, they give us the crust. They bake the bread, they give us the crust. Juba. We raise the meat, they give us the skin, and that's how my mama's troubles began. Juba.
Jon Sneed, although unaware of when or exactly where he was born, Sneed said he was almost grown when freedom came.
I well remember the day freedom was declared. We had the tearing down dinner that day. The niggas bellowed and cried and didn't want to leave massa. He talked to us and said, as long as we lived, we'd be cared for. And we were. There were lots of springs on this place, and the married niggas picked out a spring. And Master Doctor gave them stuff to put up the cabin by that spring. And they took what they had not too far from Master. They came to the big house for flour and meal and meat and such till Master died. He willed every last one of his slaves something. Most of them got a cow and a horse and a pig and some chickens. My mammy got 2 cows and a pair of horses and a wagon and 70 acres of land.
And
surrender came and Master Jim read the long papers. He said,
I'll explain to you. It's the order from the government that makes it against the law to keep you as slaves.
you should have seen those colored folks. They just shook. Their faces were long as their arms and so pestered, they didn't know what to say or do. Master never said another word. He just walked away.
The colored folks said,
Where are we gonna live? What are we gonna do?
Uncle John said,
When do we have to go?
then Master laughed heartily and said that they could stay for wages or work for halves.
Well, sir, there sure were a bunch of happy colored folks when they learned that they could stay and work. Jubilee, Jubilee, oh my Lord. Jubilee, Jubilee, oh Lord, Jubilee. What is the matter with mourners? Oh my Lord.
Devils in the amen corner.
Oh Lord, Jubilee, Jubilee, Jubilee. Oh my Lord, Jubilee, Jubilee. Oh Lord, Jubilee.
William Moore. One day I was in a cemetery in the middle of a little pond eating Simmons. And my sister Mandy came running and she said,
We niggas are free.
I looked over to the house and saw the niggas piling their little bunch of clothes and things outside their cabins. Then Mammy came running with some other niggas, and Mammy was head runner. I climbed down out of that tree and ran to meet her. She said my Sam had told her he was gonna keep me and pay her for it. She was scared. I would have to say if I wanted to or not, and she begged me not to. We got up to the house and all the niggas were standing there with their little bundles on their heads, and they all said,
Where are we going?
Mammy said,
I don't know where you all are going, but me, myself, I'm going to Miss Mary's.
So all the niggas got in the cart with Mammy and went to Miss Mary's. She met us by the back door and said, Come in, Jane, and all you children and all the rest of you. You can see my door is open and my smokehouse door is open to you. And I'd beg you down till we figure a way for you. We all cried and prayed and sang, and we were so excited we didn't eat any supper, though Mammy stirred up some victuals. It wasn't long before we found places to work. Miss Mary found us a place with a fine white man, and we worked on shed and drifted around to some other places and lived in Corsicana for a while and bought Mammy a little house, and she died there. Let my people go.
Israel was in Egypt's land. Let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go.
Susan Mary, I heard about freedom in September. And they were picking cotton. And a white man rode up on a white horse to Master's house. And the houseboy told Master that a man wanted to see him. And Master said,
All right, stranger.
was a government man. And he had this big book and bunch of papers and said, why Master hadn't let the niggas free? And Master said,
I'm trying to get the crop out.
Then he told Master to have the slaves in. And Uncle Stephen blew the cow horn, which they used to call the E. And them niggas came running, because they knew the horn meant,
come to the big house quick.
That man read them papers telling us we were free. But Master made us work several months after that. He said we get 40 acres of land and a mule. We didn't ever get it. Lots of niggas died after freedom. Because the slaves in Harrison County were turned loose right after freedom. And those in Rusk County weren't. But those in Harrison County, Rusk County tried to run to freedom, and their owners had them bushwhacked. That shot down. Oh, you could see lots of niggas hanging the trees in the Sabine bottom. Because they was trying to swim across the Sabine River to get to freedom. And their owners had them shot. There sure gonna be lots of souls crying out in judgment.
Andrew Goodman. When Moss Bob came home, he sent for all the slaves. He was sitting in a yard chair all tuckered out and shook hands all around and said he was glad to see us. Then he said,
I've got something to tell you. You are just as free as I am. You don't belong to nobody but yourselves. We done went to the war and fought, and the Yankees done whooped us. and they say the niggas are free. You can go where you want, or you could stay if you please.
He couldn't help but cry. The niggas cried but didn't know much what Moss Bob meant. They were sorry about the freedom because they didn't know where to go, and they'd always depended on old Moss to look after them. 3 families went to get forms for themselves, and the rest just worked and stayed on for hands at the old place. The Federals had been coming by even before old Moss came home. They all came by, carrying their little buckets, and if they were walking, they'd stop and look in the stables for a horse or a mule. And they just took what they wanted of corn or livestock. They did the same after Moss Bob came home. He just said,
let them go their way, because that's what they're going to do anyway.
we were scared of them than we were of the devil. But they spoke right kindly to us colored folks. They said, if you got a good master and you want to stay, well, you can do that. But now you can go where you want to go because there ain't nobody gonna stop you. The niggas couldn't hardly get used to that idea. When they wanted to leave the place, they still went up to the big house for a pass. They just couldn't understand about the freedom. Old Master Missa said, you don't need no pass. All you got to do is just take your foot in your hand and go.
March down, member, bound to go.
March down, member, bound to go. March down, member, bound to go. Brother, fare ye well.
I built my house on solid rock.
Oh, yes, Lord.
No wind, no storm could drown them out.
Oh, yes, Lord. March down, member, bound to go. March down, member, bound to go. March down, member, bound to go. Brother, fare ye well.
I never imagined that the emancipated wouldn't understand what to do when freedom came. I guess you can't really know what you've never experienced.
That is so true. Slavery didn't end until the ratification of the 13th Amendment on December 6, 1865. That was 6 months after the Juneteenth proclamation. Can you imagine? In 2013, Mississippi was the last state to sign the 13th Amendment. 2013. It's so telling.
Yes. It means that we are still dealing with the consequences of slavery. It's time for a new kind of freedom. Take my breastplate, sword in hand.
God's gonna build up Zion's walls.
March out boldly through the land.
God's gonna build up Zion's walls. Great day, the righteous marching, great day. God's gonna build up Zion's walls.